All right, I just made a list of questions I've been asked in the last couple of weeks, and I must say there's no way I can answer them all. So I picked a few top choices that I thought would be good to talk about. One, I had a young member who sent me an email, Justin, and Justin is growing. He's 16 years old, and he's growing, and he had a question about the hail netting. Some of it's called hail netting, and some's called shade netting. And some of it's pretty much the same thing. It provides both hail and shade. And if you read the listings on there, it'll tell you it saves, wind protection. It also allows wind protection. Shade netting can give you wind protection. So, it has a lot of uses. And also I'd like to define for Justin, full sun. Full sun means that you plant in a location that is full sunshine, that it's sunshine there at least 8 hours a day. That's pretty much full sun, 8 to 10 hours a day. And then now some plants like the shade. They like to be grown on the north side of a building in the shade. So that'd be a shady location. And then there's partial sun, where maybe an area where it gets 3 or 4 hours of sun a day. Yes, pumpkins do like full sun, but however, they do not need 100% of the sun's intensity in that full sun location. They only need 50% of the sun's intensity for 100% production. And that's where I don't want anybody to be confused on that. Full sun does not mean you can't use shade and hail netting. Your plants will be healthier for it, they'll be greener, they'll love you for it. All right, so moving on. I hope I answered your questions, Justin. Moving on, we have Sean Thompson asked about fertilizers, pesticides, fungicides. All right. Fertilizers, there's a lot of great fertilizers out there. In fact, you can find some if you're looking to shop. Go to Ronnie Wallace's site, Wow, Organic Wonder. Ronnie's got all kinds of great products, fertilizers. It's really hard to tell a person, hey, you need to use exactly this fertilizer and exactly this program without not knowing your soil. Everybody's soil is different. Some guy might have a problem keeping his calcium up. Another guy has a problem with low phosphorus or potassium. So really, you really need to do a soil test and really gauge what you need. I mean, you can buy specific water-soluble fertilizers that you can add to your program. But basically, if you're just out there growing for fun, you don't want to do soil tests, you don't want to get into all that, you can just use basic grows, basic blooms, mycorrhizas. And another person asked the question, hey, what do you prefer for mycorrhiza? Do you prefer granular or liquid? Well, personally, I'm a liquid kind of guy. I will use a granular in the beginning, maybe when I put it in a bed, possibly. I've used it a little, but mostly water. I like to water it in and always use non-chlorinated water. Always remember, chlorinated water will destroy your beneficials. So what you need to do is you need to let the water set for a day and let the chlorine evaporate out of it so you don't kill your beneficials. All right, so moving along, fertilizers, pesticides. We're still talking here. Sean Thompson wanted to know about pesticides. Some of the biggest pesticides I use, I think it's really hard to get around not using merit. For the squash vine borer, merit, which should be very carefully used. Some guys like to spray it. I think they're spray happy. I would not spray merit. I would water it in. You can water in it. It's systemic. The plant will draw it in through the root system. You don't have to spray it and breathe it. And, you have to get your kids and your dogs and everybody out of the yard to be spraying that stuff. You should be. And you should be wearing a respirator. And then immediately when you're done, you should go take a shower, wash your clothing, gloves, etc. You don't want to be reckless using these pesticides. And then also with merit, you're going to want to cut all the male flowers off your plants, because if the bees get into the flowers, the merit will kill the bees. We need to save the bees, very important. So if you're going to use merit, be responsible, cut off your male flowers. Just save the ones that you need, open them up when you need to pollinate, and take it from there. But don't just let all your flowers go wild. You'll kill the bees. So remember, I'm really conscious about repurposing. I think the best way to recycle is don't use it. Remember, lids are for kids. So when you go to the fast food restaurant, just say, hey, I don't need a lid with my cup. I'm a big boy now. Lids are for kids and straws are for suckers. All right? And then that way you'll save millions of lids and straws ending up in the landfills. Okay, I'm done preaching. Let's move on. Now, fungicides. Fungicides, If you want to spend a little money and get a great fungicide, Heritage. Heritage fungicide will cost you like $200, but it's really good stuff. A half a teaspoon goes a long ways. Great, great stuff. But your basic stuff, Daconol, which is Bravo. Early on when the plants are small, you can use Daconol, Bravo. Fungicides, I'm thinking what other ones I use. Agrifos. I like Agrifos, systemic fungicide. The fungicide. Agrifos. Agrifos is a very good one. I know some of the watermelon growers use the Agrifos. Or is it Agrifos? I don't know. If anybody can mess up a word, Bubb'a will do it. So that's another one I use. Pesticides, fungicides, just to base a few. There's so many out there. It's really hard to name them all. I mean, people use Warrior and Talstar, and those are quite common in the pumpkin world. You want to check those out. Now, 7-shooter. We'll move on. 7-shooter asks a question, pros and cons of selecting a pollinator. I'm not going to get into this too deep because it's really scientific. These would be a great question for Joe Altz in Minnesota, our science guru. Joe is a great guy. St. Croix Growers, great group. But one thing I can tell you is my 1734 Clements. I self-pollinated that, and when I did that year, I got an email from Alan Eaton from Canada. Sent me an email and said, "Mark, you did a wonderful thing there. You self-pollinated that 1734 Clements and that beautiful round orange-shaped pumpkin. You just sealed in those genetics. They're sealed." Because when you self-pollinate, the mama and the daddy, it's the same thing. It's gonna come through, and it's either gonna come through really good or it could come through really bad. But in the case of the 1734 Clements, it came through beautiful. I had beautiful, beautiful orange pumpkins. Everybody that grew it, Ryan Cleveland, Phil Groenwald, just on and on. More people, too many people I can mention, grew beautiful orange pumpkins from the 1734 Clements. So that was a selfing that went really well. I've had other self-pollinated seeds from world records and stuff that were just duds. They were duds. We got ribbon vines, got mutated vines, just did not play out. So it's a gamble. And I think the same thing, 7-shooter here, you ask about doing sibling crosses. I've ever done a sibling cross. So I really don't know. You're getting into a lot of chromosomes. Whatever you pollinate pumpkins with, or anything you pollinate with, you're dealing with chromosomes. And that's a crapshoot. That's a throw of the dice. All right. I do know that even in the vegetable world, there's a lot of myths out there. Like, hey, if you grow these sweet peppers and you grow this sweet pepper next to that sweet pepper, they'll come out, sweeter that year. Well, no, they won't that year, because when you pollinate something, it affects the seeds inside the fruit, and it will come out. If you grow it the next season, you grow those seeds, you will have the effects of that pollination. They will not affect that year's fruit. So keep that in mind with pollinations. You are not going to affect that year's fruit. That is the next generation, the next season. Okay, moving along. Stuart Bakes, best way to germinate long gourd. I got to tell you, long gourds, I tried it the hot and heavy way. At first they were saying, hey, you need to get them real wet and get them real hot. You want to germinate long gourds like at 90 degrees. I disagree. What you want to do with long gourd seeds is you want to snip off the 2 tips. You want to soak them for 6 or 8 hours. And then you want to keep them at about 80 degrees. Keep them at about 80 degrees and just the right moisture. Put some saran wrap over it, or a lid over your container, or whatever you're germinating those in. Don't get them too hot. One of the biggest mistakes you can make too is if you're going to germinate in a paper napkin, do not put that directly on your heating pad. I always put a buffer in there. I like to put a chunk of drywall or a piece of foam, something. You don't want, if those hot wires get directly on that seat, you'll get hot spots. Hot spots in heating pads can cause problems with germination. So you want to, I think a even, steady heat is better at 80 degrees. Don't germinate them at 90. All right, moving along. Also, let's see, Stuart Banks also want to know about Joe Platty and the Birdman joke. We were joking around about smashing pumpkins in Birdman's driveway in a video last summer, and that was pretty funny. And Stuart, you got a big kick out of that. But yeah, we like to tease Joe Platty. is still a little dumbfounded that he hasn't beaten my state records, because we used to, back in the early 2000s, Joe and I, we were like, arch rivals. One year he won, one year I won. One year Uncle Judd came in with a 1885 and Don Van Hootie had an 1885. They tied for second. Joe had a 967 pound pumpkin, which is a new state record. And we kind of jockeyed back and forth. And so it's an old rivalry. So it's just Joe's wanting to get back in the game, wanting to get back a state record. And I hope he does. I hope he does one day. And I'm sure we'll see that in the future. But anyways, moving along. Adam Conrad, I like water-soluble mycorrhizas. Water-soluble mycorrhizas. I like watering them in. That's the way to go. Adam Wolf, letting vines grow after the secondary. I like to grow with a pitchfork pattern, which a pitchfork pattern is you're putting the whole plant in front of the fruit. And all you let grow past the fruit is the main vine. You cut off all the secondaries after the main vine and just let the main vine go. And the reason you let the main vine keep growing is that tells the plant to keep trucking. Keep trucking. If you cut everything off and shut everything down, then the plant's going to say, hey, it's time to go home. Season's over. Time to go to seed and might mature the pumpkin out. So you want to keep everything trucking forward. But the theory is getting all the plant in front of the pumpkin, so it's pushing the energy to the fruit. And the theory there is vines after the fruit aren't going to come back as strongly. I don't know. It's all theory. Pumpkins have been grown many ways. So, it's up to you. Try different ways. I'll guarantee you can grow a 2,000 pound pumpkin any way you set it up. Any way you set it up, the potential's there to grow a 2,000 pound pumpkin. Christmas tree, pitchfork, spider legs, Batman, Robin. No, just kidding. But anyways, but I'm getting a little long-winded here, so we're going to cut the question and answer short. I know I didn't get to everybody. Just ask your question again or send me an email. We'll work that out. I just want to thank everybody for joining today, asking questions and answering. Remember, the April 1st contest is the giveaway. All you commenters asking questions are going to be entered in that. The more you ask, the more you're entered. All right, thanks again. I'd like you guys check out my other playlist. We have Bubba''s Home Fix-It Tips. We have watermelons, tomatoes, pandemic gardening. My new series this year is pandemic gardening. Gardening for the basic gardener, just getting started, learning the basics. And hey, it's a little challenging to me to grow indoors, moving lights around. Getting the perfect grow inside, trying to duplicate Mother Nature. So join us. And remember, keep it a secret, but go tell a friend. Bubba''s sharing home and garden tips around the world.